Alright. I gotta talk about Nikke. Again. Hey guys, Nikke's story is full of very profound topics and a lot of very dark themes. I do not goon. I do not fap. I do not crank my hog. Yes! Yeah, let's go!
I will become the goddess of victory.
Giga Drill Breaker! I'm actually getting nervous. There we fucking go. Please be Siren.
You're so adorable. I'll get rid of anything standing in your way.
I'm done. Fucking done. Fuck! Well, a whole year has passed since I've started playing Nikke and made my original video. Thank you, by the way. 10k views is insanity. And I've got a lot more to say about it now that I've caught up with the main story and reached some other milestones that I'm quite proud of. All of this has been streamed as well, both on Twitch and on YouTube as of January 2025, and I gotta tell you, those streams have always been my most favorite to do. Every time I get to do a Nikke stream, it's always been an exciting time for me and my chat because half the time, none of us know what's gonna happen next. Or even if we have some idea, we're always just there screaming about new story developments, lore, or just the heavy-hitting emotional moments. And after catching up with the story and experiencing the 3rd anniversary, Nikke has not only surpassed Final Fantasy XIV in terms of ongoing narrative in video games for me, but video games as a whole. And it's currently fighting with Expedition 33 in my head for which should be my personal game of the year. And I know that's a big claim, so let me show you all exactly why Nikke has had me fall head over heels for it and demystify much of the stigma around it. The entire reason I got into Nikke in the first place was because of a specific member of my community. Before Halloween of last year, I basically never even heard of the game, or if I'd seen anything, it was NSFW art of L.A.G. specifically. But after hearing this member of my community going off about how good the story was for the 2nd anniversary, I looked it up, saw the jiggle physics, and I was a member of the general masses that thought that's all Nikke was. But I also know that this member of the community has never steered me wrong before. That got me to appreciate so many more story games like Dot Hack, Amori, Kingdom Hearts, and I promise I'll continue those videos. I'm sorry guys, I'm just one man. But I've trusted their input before, and I figured I'd do it again. And still with some fear, because I had played Genshin Impact before, during the Inazuma era, and I regret a lot of the time and money I spent on that game at this point. I ended up not needing to worry, however, because the entire reason I've made this video, and the last one, the reason I've spent probably at least $500 in the year I've been playing this game, and the reason I've been excited to stream it every chance I got, was the story. Once again, I'll bring up the typical statement of Nikke's appeal, which is, I came for the plot, but I'm staying for the plot. Which, I mean, yeah, fair. The women are in fact quite sexy, and the story does keep you hooked. However, came into this game purely for the story, was turned off initially by the idea of the overly sexual women, and I fell in love with them. Totally not parasocial, by the way. And I've stuck around for the story like everybody else. And the campaign alone is a great enough selling point for the story. No matter what you take away from this video, if you have any reservations or doubts, go play the first 2 to 3 chapters of the campaign and come to your own conclusions about the story. I'll give big spoiler warnings if you're curious but want to hear more or are already convinced, and if you're not convinced, well then you can ignore that and maybe the spoilers will convince you anyways. And I mean, hey, I wouldn't even blame you, because I myself needed the spoilers to get onboarded to the game to begin with. So what is it that makes Nikke's story so good? Well, I mean, it's sort of everything you would actually expect from a good story. Good dialogue, good pacing, setups and payoffs, likable characters, etc, etc. But that's the simple and boring answer, so I'll hone in on the setups and payoffs most, because that's honestly what's having me go insane about the quality of the story. And after that, I can go into the characters and the writing and all the other stuff I love so goddamn much. All of this will involve spoilers of various parts of the game, so go through at your own discretion. The first and craziest bit of setup and payoff is a detail about the world. We learn early on that humanity's last refuge is the Ark, a massive city-state-like environment underground to keep humanity safe from the Raptures, which you can interpret as mechanical Tyranids from Warhammer 40k, but instead of consuming all biomass, they just want to exterminate humanity specifically. In the 2025 New Year's event, Footstep Walk Run, we learn that the space elevator that leads up to the Rapture Queen was powered by a colossal Rapture Core, and that it was linked with another colossal Rapture Core. That second one, however, is in the Ark. It's already a massive enough reveal on its own that humanity's bastion is using technology of things that want to eradicate them, but it gets even wilder. If you're in the lobby, you can see a button that takes you to the Ark for cutscenes and a lot of your daily activities. But, the icon. Guess what that looks like? Yup. That's a Rapture Eye, or core, right there. That's been there since the freaking beta. They had this shit fucking planned out so far ahead. And then there's the whole affair with the events themselves and how they culminate together both in the main campaign as well as future events. Like, very early on in the main story, like chapter 6 or something, all the main characters we're with are basically playing pretend with a new girl, Alice, saying how they have magical weapons and stuff. And offhandedly, Rappy's weapon is described as being in her chest, and then fucking 10 or more chapters later, we learn that that is actually true.
Sweet Mama Jamma!
And her whole backstory that explains that is so freaking sad, and oh my gosh, look at small Rappy! But we don't just learn why that offhand comment is true, and we don't just see a badass send-off for it. That whole affair reaches its climax in the campaign chapter that was released at the same patch that I started playing. But that is covered a lot in, as I said, the 2025 New Year's event Footstep Walk Run, which is both Rappy's backstory and also the conclusion to the character arc of Red Hood, a member of the Goddess Squad who, in the campaign, we don't know too much about until you do her event Red Ash, which was the first anniversary event that ever happened, and that showcased the Goddess Squad. In that event, we get to enjoy Red Hood, Snow White, Rapunzel, Dorothy, Lily Weiss, aka Lilith, and their commander, only known as Legendary Commander, all being a happy family together. That is, until Red Hood reveals that she's dying to basically a corrupted code that is damaging her nervous system, to put it simply, and even is trying to influence her to side with the Raptures. And this creates a story of a family being broken by a loved one dying of a terminal illness, while another quietly keeps their own slow death a secret to spare the rest of them from any more pain. But that event isn't even just all sadness, it also is inspiring to show familial bonds that people can have, even if they aren't related by blood, and it is both heartwarming and badass as fuck, as Red Hood makes right by her family and comes back for a proper send-off. And you want to know what makes that storytelling crazy? Well, in the first half anniversary event, Overzone, actually happens after Red Ash chronologically speaking, and it features the Goddess Squad, minus Red Hood, Lily Weiss, and the Commander, broken and down on their luck as they try to defend the Ark's creation, only for tragedy to strike in a moment that genuinely no other game has done in my entire life, which is stun me for several minutes with tears in my eyes. But we'll put a pin in that. So they structured the story to see what life was like after Red Hood's death, give us that glimmer of joy of the family being together, and rip it away from us. I love it. But that's not all. The villain of Red Ash is the Nikke named Cinderella, who was corrupted and turned into a heretic named Anichiro. We see her fucking destroy the Goddess Squad at the start, and then at the end, Red Hood finishes the job, saves the day by giving Cinderella a little stomach purging, and has a happy send-off with her squad mates. But then the second anniversary event, Old Tales, shows us Cinderella's side of the story, and how she was trapped in her own mind by corruption set up by this bitch! And that event is also incredibly fucking sad, and then the 2.5 anniversary follows her squad mate Siren, who then gives us a massive revelation after that event! And all of this comes together in the third anniversary event, where we get our Avengers Infinity War moment, with literally everyone being there to take on what was supposed to be the final boss of Nikke, the Queen. And so much stuff happens, oh my goodness! And when I say Avengers Infinity War, I fucking mean it. it is remarkably similar. So, to all the Marvel fans out there, I fucking get it, dude. I understand what you were going through. There is so much more that goes on in these events, and their connections to each other, the main campaign, and the side stories that get written for whatever purposes Shift Up has. But I can't go on with just those, or else we'll be here for hours. But you want to know what really makes all of what I just told you absolutely insane? It's the fact that Shift Up has gone on record saying that we are only in the fucking prologue of Nikke, and they have a minimum of 10 years planned for it. Like, what? That's insane, considering the setup they've already done so far for the past 3 years. But the fact that the most recent update was very likely meant to mark the end of the prologue, it leaves my jaw agape thinking about what Act 1 is supposed to hold. Oh, and also don't worry about missing these events for whatever reason. With every update the game does, they add more and more past events to an archive where you can access them at any time and not only experience their stories, but collect rewards from them, like music or lobby screens. And honestly, I wish every single live service game did this, both MMOs and gachas. But then there's the characters to add all that beautiful emotional connection to make these events hit so much harder. If you want villains, we've got villains. We've got actual scum of the earth, unrepentant parasites like Dobin, giving us someone to see excited to lose eventually, and revel in our hatred of him otherwise. We have a suspicious and untrustworthy AI with Nikke, who I find to be quite fitting as a potential villain in our current situation in real life. We have someone who sparks actual moral and ethical dilemmas with Crow, who absolutely has a point with her reasoning, but her actions are just too reprehensible to abide by. And we even have the potential for a villain to be redeemed in the form of Suen, whose very first introduction was forcing you to kneel and her stepping on you, delivering a very similar attitude to the Araki method of having the bad guy kick a dog. Don't worry though, she may yet have a chance to redeem herself after getting her comeuppance. And what good is a villain without a hero? And not only do we have a true hero with Laplace, who gets a chapter dedicated to her that culminates in a beautiful animal style. Animal style? Really? Fucking animal style? Sure, just fucking slather onions and cheese on that cutscene, why not? Anime style cutscene, and a personal song dedicated to her. And we have it with not just Laplace, but many other cast members all trying to do the right thing. The Commander is the very first hero this game has, and is ever present, because he cares as deeply for the Nikkes in his company as he would for the rest of humanity. The man fucking bandages these girls when he and literally everyone else knows it is only a morale booster at best and a waste of resources at worst. And his squad, the Counters, consisting of Rappy, Anise, and Neon, all get excellent moments to shine with heroism and either save the day and prove themselves to be goddesses of victory, especially Anise this past update. And speaking of goddess of victory, I just need to talk about this magical moment that happens in Nikke. It doesn't matter when it happens, although it is largely reserved for the events, but there will be times where we are at our emotionally highest or lowest point in the story, and a character is performing an act of true heroism, one that has the emotional music swelling, like You Say Run or something, and someone else calls them their goddess of victory. I cannot stress to you just how fucking incredible those moments are. Hell, I'm even welling up with tears right now as I think about all of those moments. You would think that this very simple phrase wouldn't have much impact, especially considering it's the title of the game, and you hear all the characters say it each time you log into the game, but that title is not thrown around willy-nilly, or just for a somewhat cheap anime moment akin to, I fight for my friends! No. That title is reserved for when a Nikke goes above and beyond to be a shining beacon for all who look at her, and inspire others to carry on for humanity. And when they are blessed with that glorious title,
My goddess of victory!
Goddesses of victory.
goddess of victory.
My goddess of victory.
Chills! Literal chills. And I'll talk more about the music in a moment, but in the song Rising Higher, which is Rappy's theme song from Footstep Walk Run, it has a lyric of, and it just pumps me up so much I can't fucking contain myself. I have tears in my eyes right now as I think about it. But let's come back to that comment I made earlier about how no game has stunned me to tears. I genuinely mean that. In the 15 years I've been able to have actual genuine opinions on things, not a single game I have played has ever actually had me pause it, stunned in silence, and have tears flowing down my cheeks. Plenty of games have left me bawling my eyes out and hyperventilating with the emotions I was feeling, such as The Walk from Final Fantasy XIV's Endwalker, or the latter portions of Expedition 33. But not a single one floored me like how Nikke has. And Nikke's done it twice, both with Overzone, as I've said, but also with a moment much later on in the campaign with the last story update in August 2025 or so. That one has a much more serious topic, and I think it's better directly experienced rather than me retelling it, because it is a very sensitive topic. And what kind of video about a gacha game would this be if I didn't talk about the music? Nikke has a couple of artists that work on songs that they release quite regularly, at least one song every event, a larger amount during larger events, and a metric fuckton during anniversaries. Cosmograph being the main guy that Shift Up has on their payroll, the man can compose and create some tracks that stay forever stuck in my head and are able to Pavlov me into an emotional breakdown of either hype or sadness, much like everyone who has watched Cyberpunk Edgerunners. The featured song of the most recent anniversary, where Purnell voices the track Hurricanes, is one of the best tracks that I have ever heard composed for a video game, at the very least, without considering Expedition 33. But it still leaves me with chills every single time I hear it, and I'm just welling up with tears in just sheer hype when I listen to it. Not only that, but as a part of the shift into what a lot of us now believe is Act 1 of Nikke's story, Shift Up had changed the music video that plays when you download updates for the game, and they fucking got the lead singer for Bury the Light to sing it. And it goes so fucking hard. Some other notable tracks that aren't just that infect my ears, and that I'm happy to have stay there, are the main theme for Footstep Walk Run, specifically when you pair it with the visuals that they had for the event's cover menu thing, Drifter from the 3rd anniversary, and Our Hometown from Red Ash. I would heavily advise listening to those specifically.
But wait! There's more!
I haven't interacted with the wider community of Nikke as a whole that much, but I think one of the best things about the community's relationship with Shift Up is encapsulated by the content creator known as Musan Pro. You know those odd autism characters that you've seen probably of either your favorite anime characters or VTubers? Those are Doros. What's a Doro? This is a Doro. This is the autism creature based on the character Dorothy in the game. There's a video by the user Rocco that goes into full detail about it, but to summarize, that design was actually purchased by Shift Up to act as a meme mascot for the game, and it got further popularized by Musan Pro. The man was actually considered so funny by Shift Up that they actually went and hired him to be their professional shitposter animator. And I know some companies have hired people that made fan content, like Games Workshop and the Astartes guy, but for memes of a funny little mascot, I don't think I've seen anything like that before. So I'll leave it at that, or else I'm actually gonna be here for another 2 hours praising this game to the ends of the earth and back before I even get into anything else I wanted to talk about. The story is genuinely one of, if not the best video game story I have ever experienced. The music has left an unhealable scar upon my soul that I wear with pride, and the effect it had both on its players and the internet as a whole, due to the good relationship the community has with the developers, makes this game one that I love with all my heart. And now that I've laid but a fraction of my heart out as to why I love Nikke so much, I'd like to address something that's kind of interesting but also a little sad. I have no delusions against the fact that Nikke is a very sexy game that has marketing that utilizes that sexiness. So when people call it a Gooner game, I can't deny it. But the odd thing is that while the marketing is used to draw people into the game, every single time a person I either find or personally speak to says that they don't want to play Nikke, they say it's because it's a Gooner game. Don't get me wrong, I dislike fan service as much as the next guy. Hell, I couldn't stomach the first half of Fire Force Season 1, and I know that shit is tame in comparison. But the attitude that is carried by people being this obstinate makes it seem like they perceive Nikke as quite literally just a porn game and nothing else, which baffles me to no end, especially as I praise it non-stop to them. So I'd like to address that point specifically for just a little bit. So first off, I'd hope that what I talked about in the Goddess of Victory section is enough to explain to you that Nikke is far more than just a basic Gooner game that is designed to be played with one hand at most. But not only is the game's writing good on its own, it also knows when to take itself seriously and when it's going to be sexy. All of those plot revelations and stuff I talked about was played as straight as an arrow, and about 80% of the story is that level of serious, or at least not focused on the sexy. But Nikke isn't all trauma and depression, despite how much they put in here. It also has excellent comedy, which is often used as the outlet to let the sexy come out. A great example would be the contrast between last year's winter event, Ice Dragon Saga, and this year's summer event, Boom the Ghost. Both of these are seasonal events that chose to be funny instead of serious or sad or anything. Ice Dragon Saga's comedy is pretty much entirely not sexy at all, and utilizes a shit ton of pop culture references for a non-stop barrage of jokes. Boom the Ghost, however, takes the opportunity to let the characters being in swimsuits be a point of comedy. Like at the start, we meet all the characters that will be involved in the event story, and so many of them can barely scrounge up a single brain cell between them. And while they're doing stupid, silly antics on their way to the actual area of the story will be taking place, we have the straight man Dorothy there to react to their stupidity, and it's fucking great. This especially is true when Rappy wants to personally get involved in Dorothy participating in the adventure. And all of Story 1 is silly, goofy situations with the characters trying to outrun the ghosts and stuff. And then in Story 2 of both of these events, we pull back the funny, and thus also the sexy. They get saved to be used more as a sprinkling on the more serious story beats that happen in their second parts. Ice Dragon Saga shows how Guillotine and Maiden are experiencing incredible guilt over their choices that they've made, and Guillotine especially has to overcome that. In Boom the Ghost, which was supposed to be a silly summer adventure, fucking calls back to Overzone of all events, and it actually gets very emotional near the end. And sure, we can envision Rappy and Dorothy splashing around in the pool as a sexy thing. The game, however, doesn't treat it that way at all. Then there's the matter of the MC of the game, which admittedly is basically unavoidable to have a gacha game MC that all the other characters don't flock to for whatever reasons they may have. However, the MC of this game, the Commander, aka SKK, is very different from pretty much every other gacha MC I have either played as or seen. Unlike games such as Arknights, Uma Musume, or I would presume Blue Archive, the Commander is not a blank slate the character can use to represent themselves as they check dialogue options with the other characters. He's entirely his own character with his own morals, thoughts, and goals, and pretty much none of his behavior involves being forward with any of the other characters in this game. Pretty much 99% of all of the Commander's actions in Nikke involve his own goals of attaining power so he can have Nikkes and humans coexist happily, and have essentially a family in the form of the Counter Squad and Marion. That, or actually experiencing, the plot. The other 1% is definitely more on the fan service side, where some Nikkes actually do get to have sex with him in one way or another, and I do think it could actually equate to 1% of all the Commander's screen time, as it were. And those scenes involve characters that you could at least understand as being, well, let's just say very thirsty. But hell, even in Boom the Ghost, the Commander actually respects the girls to the point where he doesn't jump at any opportunity to be intimate with them. Even Rappy, who is the leading lady of the entire story, and that very obviously wants him to shatter her pelvis when it'd honestly be the other way around. And there was a group of people that were unhappy that sex didn't happen that event. So if you have people who are playing your allegedly only porn game complaining that there's not enough sex, I feel like that is something that needs investigating. And then there's the whole deal about how other games are far more porn-like than Nikke. While I would love to complain about how Nikke gets a bad rep, yet somehow in Girls Frontline 2 you can play with the women's feet, I'm not going to. But I do feel as though that between the Girls Frontline 2 thing, a majority of Brown Dust 2's marketing, and the fact that Love in Deep Space is far more engineered to be a very parasocial experience for women at the very least, Nikke is far more tame. So while yes, Nikke is a Gooner game, it is far more than just a Gooner game, contrary to what the people I talk to would say. And when it does lean into the sexiness, it is far more used for comedy, and is able to take itself way more seriously than many would expect, myself included when I was brand new. Especially when the market out there is much further along the porn spectrum than Nikke is. At this point, I have played a handful of gachas, and I do genuinely believe Nikke has the best system out there. Save for, I think, Limbus Company? I haven't played it, but I have heard it's pretty good. I won't spend too long on this, because I already went over the basics of Nikke's gacha in my original video from last year, but I want to offer some points of comparison when it comes to the gacha models of current games out currently. The most popular model I see right now is the one set by Hoyoverse, which is about 90% of all characters, who also have their own accompanying weapons, are limited and thus can't be acquired except by their own specific banner, or the standard banner if they have been deemed some quality to be put there by the devs. You then track your pity with a counter, and once you hit 90 or 180 pulls, you're guaranteed to hit an SSR, of which is a coin flip for the featured character, which becomes a true guarantee at 180. Obviously, rates can be different across games, but my experience having played Genshin Impact had it at an unforgivably abusive 0.6% chance to even hit an SSR in the first place, not even accounting for the coin flip. But I have also been informed that the coin flip has been adjusted to be more of a 45-55 odds when consolidated now instead, so I guess it's a little better. On the face of it, I see the appeal of the system, because you have a hard cap on pulls before you get who you want, and you don't need to do chain pulls to get them. But my issue with it is that you basically have to overpull on a banner to have your pity tracker better set up, or skip an otherwise appealing banner entirely just so you can ensure you get another character that you want, which you have no choice but to concede to due to the limited nature of each character. And then when it comes to one of the other most popular gacha games right now, Uma Musume, which I play, it honestly feels even worse than that, despite the generosity Cygames has with just sending out 10 pulls. Uma doesn't have a pity system whatsoever, and if you want an absolute guarantee on either the character or support card you're aiming for, you need to spend 200 pulls on that banner. And if you can't, any pulls get converted into a currency that not even 200 of which can buy you a single pull. Couple that with the fact that the featured character or card rates is 0.75%, and you have to divvy up your pulls between characters and cards, it feels like you really have so little opportunity to feel confident in your odds to get what you want. I also want to point out I've played Arknights, but I think its gacha is honestly quite fine as well for the genre, so I won't talk about it here. But Nikke, on the other hand, fixes these problems I've just mentioned pretty well. First of all, the rate for any SSR in the game is 4%, which is even higher than Uma's 3%, and the featured character's rate is half of that 4%, or 1/4 if they're an in-lore super powerful or rare character called a Pilgrim or Overspec. Then when it comes to accessing the standard pool, you can limit the standard banner to 20 total characters, 5 from each manufacturer, so you don't face the problem that Uma has, where there are just too many characters to reliably hope for someone you want, even if you're pulling for someone else. Then your pity system is a currency that never goes away, and when you amass 200 of it from either your featured character pulls or the standard banner, you can immediately purchase a copy of the featured character or a duplicate of a random selection of characters that rotates by the day. This lets you try your luck on banners you're interested in and not be punished later on when a more desirable banner comes up. And even if you miss out on the character, you can just wishlist them and greatly improve your odds while you pull on the standard banner. Then we have a whole bunch of alternative mini gacha elements, which act as a nice boost, but it'd be way too long to get into it, but I'll just let you know, it's basically a bonus single pull with like 60-40 odds in your favor. You may get once a week or two, unless you do a lot of regular pulling, then it's more. And that's the general core of how Nikke's gacha works. Some characters unfortunately do still remain limited, such as characters from collabs or seasonal events, but I'll air my grievances out in an upcoming segment. However, all this talk about rates and character pools means nothing without having the resources to pull them, so I do also need to bring up the pulls per banner metric. Going back to Genshin Impact, my experience was quite limited back during the Inazuma era, but from doing my dailies and Spiral Abyss and everything, it felt like I was getting a single 10 pull per banner at best. But as it turns out, that was my bias speaking, because thanks to a friend of mine providing this handy graph here, it actually appears as though that the average pulls per patch Genshin has is usually enough to hit its soft pity point, or roughly 20 to 30 pulls per banner. Nikke actually has quite a similar amount of pulls per banner, assuming you do every activity available to you in your dailies, and get minorly lucky with gems, which then, combined with the pulls you get from each event shop, can total to roughly 20 to 30 pulls per banner. One advantage Nikke does have, though, is that not only do event shops give you pulls for the standard banner, but sometimes there are week-long daily logins that net you 10 pulls on the standard banner as well, and the Battle Pass skins, which are exactly what they sound like, also give 10 to 20 standard pulls and maybe some featured pulls as well. But now one last thing to mention is duplicates, which is unavoidable to get in gachas and oftentimes is what whales will spend their money on. Duplicates in Nikke have very little importance to them. The average player will at most want 4 total copies of the character just so they can get a lobby screen of that character's burst skill. 11 total duplicates equates to getting a shiny profile picture of that character, and about double stats, which is nothing to sneeze at, but it's not crucial to be functional. What this means is that if all you care about is having the character and that's it, all you need is a single pull and you're good. Contrast this with Uma, which you need 5 copies of several cards to have a chance to not mauled during careers, or even stand a chance in post-career gameplay, or Genshin, where some duplicates fundamentally change how a character works. And Nikke's feels way less mandatory, at least to me, even if it is overall potentially less interesting. Now granted, credit where credit is due, Genshin has recently added a system that grants 4 duplicates over the course of a year for specific characters for basically free, which I would never imagine them to do ever, so good job, Hoyoverse. But otherwise, there you have it. The overall basics of the rates, pity, duplicate importance, and pulls per banner of Nikke versus the more popular models I've experienced now. I'm sure that after learning what I have now, I wouldn't feel nearly as bad about Genshin's gacha, but for the reasons I've said before, I just can't get over it, and I'm still not a fan. Uma is fun, but its gacha is pretty toxic as far as I'm concerned, which is sad. At least with Nikke, it feels like I can get every character I want at least once without ever spending money, and that Shift Up wants me to get the characters. Obviously, I'd have to spend money to get more copies or anything, but I'm more okay with that at the very least. And now, what are we even doing in service to getting more pulls for this gacha? And what is the point of engaging in this gacha beyond just waifu collecting? Well, that's what I'll now be going over, to give you at least the basic idea of what your daily activities will be and what they're all for. So your Heelys in Nikke, your dailies in Nikke will start off somewhat involved as you actually learn how to engage with them and learn how to do them more efficiently. So I can't say how long it will take for you to do them early on, especially as I don't even remember how they were for me. This is in part due to the fact that they have been changed enough times in the year I started playing that makes them far more efficient and far less time consuming to actually do. I can say, however, that once you get them down, doing your dailies will take no more than 15 minutes, upwards of 30 or so when you do the parts that contribute to your weeklies. And this is because a lot of doing your dailies or your weeklies is actually playing the game in order to set up a method that just lets you press some buttons and collect your rewards for the rest of the week. And your daily activities include Simulation Room, which is a semi-roguelike that gives you skill books. It has quick simulation function that will just skip you ahead to the very end of what you're capable of doing and give you your rewards, letting you engage with that roguelike just a little bit. Interception, where you try and eat away at upwards of 9 levels of a specific boss's health bar to get more and better equipment that functions as relics in Genshin Impact terminology. This is also a big part of endgame with team building. It also gives you a weekly autocomplete function after you manually do it for the first time in a week if you're happy with your results. PvP, where you set up 1 to 3 teams of both attack and defense and let them auto-battle it out against other players. The more wins you get, the higher your rating. The higher your rating, the more PvP currency you get, which can be used to buy more skill books, and also the more gems you get every 2 weeks, which means more pulls. Tribe and Manufacturer Tower, which is a massive climb of like 1,000 floors or something, with certain encounters on each floor. Clearing these gives you more gems and secondary gacha resources. Manufacturer Towers only let you use characters of that manufacturer, so team building is also super important here too. Farming stage 11 of the current event that's going on, possibly doing a minigame if it has one, and doing the challenge mode of it, which is, at this stage, thoughtlessly easy for me at least. Doing all of these activities gives you stuff to buy in the event shop, which is super important for account progression and getting more pulls. Doing advice sessions with your Nikkes, which gives you a fun little 1 minute aside with them that increases their bond with you. This does improve their stats, but it's not such a crazy increase that you'd be at a loss without it or anything. And doing these dailies are in service to 2 things that aren't more gacha: the campaign and raids. Yes, the campaign normally requires you to get stronger in order to experience it. However, if you are exclusively there for the story and literally nothing else, not even caring about the gacha all that much, then the campaign does have a new story mode that was added in the most recent update, which drastically lowers the power requirements to do it, and also cuts out a ton of the in-between fights. They added this because both the reason you'd grind in order to do the campaign, as well as also why it's harder to get into it all the way through, is that if your power level is below the recommended power of the encounter, then not only is it just more difficult in general, but all the stats of all your characters get reduced, making it exponentially harder. I was stuck on a boss in the campaign for a whole month because of this. But now with story mode, you don't have to worry. However, if you do use story mode, you don't get any of the rewards for doing the campaign on normal mode. There's also a hard mode as an endgame activity, but it's really simple, just bigger numbers. I advise doing 1 chapter of hard mode for every 2 chapters of normal mode you do. Then there's the raids. Sadly, it's not like an MMO raiding team with 8 to 40 people all blasting away at the boss, but it's more just you dealing with boss encounters in different ways. Solo Raid has you face a really big and intimidating boss that is usually tied to the current event that's going on, but not always, and you have to make 5 teams to kill it for 7 increasing difficulty levels, capping out at challenge difficulty. In this difficulty, all your characters are set to level 400, and instead of killing the boss, you try to maximize as much damage as possible on it with those 5 teams and their 3-minute time limits. Your damage is then represented as a score and compared to everyone else, with you getting more gems and fancier profile borders the higher rank you get. I'm not a day 1 player, nor would I describe myself as a whale, but I'm able to get top 5 to 10% every raid now, and you only need top 3% to get the fanciest rank, so anyone can have a realistic chance of it. Union Raid, on the other hand, has you and your union, which is basically a guild, fight 5 different bosses that, once they're all defeated, go up a difficulty level, up to level 10 and then hard mode, which is bullshit by the way. Everybody gets 3 attempts per day, and tries to kill as many bosses as possible to get to the higher levels as quickly as possible. It does require a tiny bit of coordination to make sure no one overlaps or takes away an attempt at a boss that's easier for someone else, but it's honestly not that bad. My union is just 4 active players, and we can get to hard mode with a day to spare, meaning we get basically all the rewards we care about. And these rewards are a specific currency that can be used to upgrade other aspects of account progression, or duplicates of specific characters that you actually can't get through the gacha, but that's a whole different thing. So I know I didn't go super in-depth with the nature of your dailies or the raids, but I just simply find the fact that I can be in and out with the stuff I genuinely don't care about within about 15 minutes to be quite freeing, and it keeps me from burning out on the game, and I can still be excited for experiencing the story or the harder content. That harder content with the raids also lets Nikke's gameplay shine a shit ton more, as you now have to actually think about what your team compositions are, how you're going to build each character, and what you're going to do in encounters to maximize your damage as much as possible. If you're new to Nikke, or are concerned about how easy or idle a game like the combat is, I feel like solo and union raid can fix that easily. Especially since they've added a solo raid museum, where you can go back and fight some older famous solo raid encounters and get more rewards for it. So while I may have been going on for like 40 minutes at this point, saying what I love about this game, and there's even more that I could go on about, but no game is truly perfect, no matter how close they can get. And I would be remiss if I didn't share some of the things about the game that I find are either done poorly or could just generally be improved upon. First thing to talk about is the elephant in the room. Nikke, as good as it is still a gacha at the end of the day. And while Shift Up is incredibly generous, the only way for Nikke being a gacha to be actually irrelevant is if they gave enough pulls for you to get 4 copies of every single character that releases. But the generosity is at least still good enough that I can at least accept it. That is, however, not the case with limited banners. Limited banners via collabs and seasonal events are pure FOMO because you have literally only one chance to get those characters before you have to wait a whole year to try again if it's seasonal, or hope and pray Shift Up either reruns or does a sequel collab event for you to get those characters from those collabs. I wasn't around for the ReZero collab, and I would absolutely love to have Emilia, both because she's best girl, and also because she's godlike in PvP. But I can't get her, likely ever, because she's a collab unit. And then there's the controversial choice of having Summer Dorothy be both a seasonal unit and a pilgrim, which meant she was already harder to get, and that she was only available for 3 weeks, and won't be available for a whole nother year. That issue is exacerbated by the fact that she is an incredibly powerful character for both shotgun teams and water teams, making it a very hard choice to skip her. I was lucky enough to get her, but some weren't, and many more weren't even around to try. This also applies to free content. Every year they run a popularity poll to see which character is the most favorite of the community at large, and then they give that character both a free skin that is on the level of a gacha skin, as well as a unique song and mini event for them. I wasn't around for Red Hood's event for her skin, so while I was happy to drop $60 on her gacha skin, I will never be able to experience her mini event, nor will I ever get to see her wearing that dress on my account. And now that is also true for Rappy's popularity skin that she received this year. And yes, you heard me right. $60 gacha skin. This is another aspect of the game pretty much every player can unanimously agree on is toxic and needs to change. Every big event they do, they release a super high quality skin with a whole new set of everything a character's appearance could have, voice lines included. Then they put this skin up in a costume gacha, where while they may give you free spins, it's not even enough to have the slightest chance to get the skin. And the odds of it coming into your account are so bad that it'll cost you 52 to 60 USD to buy enough spins to guarantee it. Or closer to 40 if you get lucky enough on later spins. But you might as well get the rest of the consolation prizes they have left at that point, right? And then when the event that has that skin is over, the skin is gone forever, as far as things stand currently. It should be plain to see that due to the skin having the highest quality of skins available in the game, and their timed exclusivity, this is pure exploitation of FOMO. Couple that with the price of it being what video games used to be, and this is just plainly obnoxious. I'd advise against spending money on the gacha skins if you play the game, but I won't deny that I have fallen victim to the tactics used for this, and I've bought 3 gacha skins. While it may be a lot, and I obviously wish I didn't spend $180 total on these skins, and I also don't condone this method, I still, at the very least, enjoy the game enough that I don't regret giving Shift Up my money. I just wish it went to something else in the game and not this toxic system that they have. And when it comes to your dailies, while they may have made them much more smooth to do with the weekly quick battle interception and quick simulation that you don't even need to enter the fight with a foregone conclusion anymore, the simulation room still leaves a bit to be desired for me personally. Every 2 weeks, when the overclock simulation resets, which is just where you get even more rewards, your buffs that you got from simulation room also reset. And you have to engage with the roguelike system again to get the same buffs. If you're at like 1 billion power for your squad, then this doesn't affect you, and it eventually won't affect me. But for many, it does. The buffs in the simulation room are a major contributor to your actual effectiveness in encounters in the simulation, as well as your actual numbers, so getting the right ones matters a fair bit, if anything, than just for synergies and raw numbers. But 95% of the time, you will be presented with actually useless buffs, such as reload speed while below 20% that will only affect Nikke's of a specific manufacturer, one of which you may not even have on your squad. You can get something like that for all 3 of your choices multiple times in a row. And while the majority of the pool of buffs is not something that bad, a lot of them have similar levels of just being unusable and skippable. What you want is Attack Up, Drain Converter, and whichever buff affects your team the best based on their weapons, and you want those both universally and for their specific roles and manufacturers. Oh, and don't forget that the buffs have to be the right symbol too, so they stack up and give good bonuses too. I dread every simulation room reset because it is a tedious process to get buffs that will actually even do anything for me, just to make overclock easier. Then in overclock, it is actually designed fairly well, with letting you craft the difficulty you want by selecting certain modifiers, but the rewards cap out at level 25, and you can still add more modifiers to go past level 25. So the only reason to add more is purely for the challenge and for bragging rights, which I'm not against in general, but when you tie rewards to the difficulty of this mode, it all of a sudden creates a situation to where there's really no need to go further beyond in difficulty. If they scale the rewards to give even more, and maybe even like a small cosmetic or something for each overclock simulation you beat with every single modifier active, then I feel like I could at least care to try for a higher difficulty and be more willing to think about my buffs to get a good setup going so that I have the best chance of clearing it. But as it stands, that's not happening. Now, this next point is very likely going to be just a me problem, but in regards to PvP, specifically Rookie Arena, I specify Rookie Arena because it seems like in Special Arena, you actually have to be thoughtful of your team comp and who you choose to fight with your own 2 daily attempts. This does not feel to be the case for Rookie Arena, which instead feels like you're supposed to pick on the little guy, regardless of anyone's team composition. In the brackets I get placed in, there's usually 2 to 3 players who are much higher power than me, so much so that it doesn't even matter what our team comps are. I just straight up won't have the numbers to stand even the most remote chance of beating them. Then from there, there's at least a somewhat healthy mix of players who are within a reasonable power range from me with decent team comps, and I then get to make choices. But there's always at least 2 to 3 players whose power is to mine as those monsters are to me. And this is all the more obvious when Rookie Arena gets its season reset every 2 weeks, where for the first few hours, I get paired with one dude who would never, ever be beaten by me, and like, half a dozen brand new players. And like, why? I get that new seasons are fresh starts, but what's the point of pairing me with people who can't even dream of being at the investment level I'm at, and a dude who I could never dream of beating? I don't feel like I'm good or bad at the game, or that I'm rewarded for my time or money by beating these people. Literally anyone who knows this game in the slightest amount can easily tell that this is a foregone conclusion, and I'm pretty sure the system can still look for people who are of a comparable power to me. So, who is this for? And so the game just tells me I should pick on the little guy for no good reason, despite even rewarding more rank points for fighting people that are a higher power than you. So like, what? But those are my biggest complaints. This last thing is more of just a general criticism for the game and my desire for it to improve. There is something weird with the early-ish chapters up to 24 largely, where the written script and the script the actors were given are not the same. This wouldn't even be worth bringing up, but it is fairly frequent for a good portion of the game, and it does leak through here and there even now. I'm not sure of the inner workings of the writers and the voice actors, but I would like for a bit more quality control to be done between the scripts, and for them to go back and fix some of these mistakes. Except for Ingrid calling the commander protagonist! Cause that shit is fucking hilarious. So while I do love Nikke to death, it's not perfect. And I do hope that as this game's story enters its next act, Shift Up takes this as an opportunity to improve what I talked about here. And if any of you who play Nikke and watch this video have other complaints or wishes for the game to improve, do feel free to share them in the comments. Alright, I think I've said everything I wanted to say about Nikke, or at the very least anything condensed into about an hour, rather than several hours. This is definitely the longest project I have worked on so far, and I thank you all for watching it, however much you did. It means a lot to me that anybody even cares to look at my stuff, and I'm especially proud of this, considering, I worked on it for a whole month and a half. I already was planning on making a I gotta talk about Nikke again video before the 3rd anniversary happened, but as soon as I saw the ending to Goddess Fall, I dropped everything I was gonna be making, and I immediately rushed to start making this, because everybody now needs to actually see exactly what it is that I mean that makes this game so good, and should be able to make an informed decision on whether or not they want to play, which I do hope they choose to do. If you don't currently play Nikke, I do genuinely hope that you play at the very least the first 2 chapters to see what it's like. And if you do play Nikke, well then you and I are just celebrating the game at this point, and I'm all the more happy to do that. And regardless of whether you play or not, I do hope this video was entertaining to you, at least a little bit. And I thank you for watching however much you did. It does mean a lot to me that anybody wants to watch my stuff and sticks through however much of it there is. I meant every single word I said this video with why Nikke has become one of my favorite games of all time, at the very least in regards to story, and my experience streaming it and sharing it with a whole bunch of other people has been absolutely wonderful, and it is a big reason why 2025 was a great year for me. I just love that I now have a community of people that also love a game I love and we can all be excited for, and I really hope that I cultivate that even more with this video. So yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you for watching the video, however much you did, and thank you to every single person that shows up to the Twitch streams or YouTube streams. It really means a lot to me that all of you want to show up. And considering when this video is going live, here's to more Nikke, and here's to a great 2026 coming in. Happy holidays, everybody. Take care. I'll see you next video. Bye-bye.
Thanks to you all, my life, our lives have meaning. I believe that life itself can be art. By expressing oneself, by having an influence on others, you are creating art every waking moment of your life, simply by living. May your lives in all their artistic splendor continue on and be passed down to future generations.